Hello fellow YouTube friends, followers, fools and flabbergasters, my name is Mason and it's time for another easy PvE build guide. Today's build of choice is Condition Harbinger, a build that I haven't covered in quite a while. Condi Harbinger is a very strong choice for instance content and very beginner friendly, especially with a simplified rotation. It's a great pick for solo gameplay as well, as it can provide itself with good amounts of many essential boons, so quickness, protection, fury and might, and substantial amounts of self-healing. Via Elixir of Ambitions, Deathly Haste and Twisted Medicine, it can also be adjusted to provide quickness and a partial uptime on all other boons easily without larger adjustments to gear. The most important change on Harbinger compared to Core Necromancer is that Harbinger Shroud does not shield your health bar while it is active. You will still drain the life force or the resource for Shroud every second. While it seems like a disadvantage at first, it also has an advantage, because you can sustain your Shroud irrespective of the amount of incoming damage. The second important mechanic on Harbinger is Blight. Blight is a stacking effect that reduces your health per stack by 3%, but it also grants increased condition damage. You stack Blight up by staying in Shroud or by casting elixirs on yourself. In turn, you can consume stacks of Blight with Shroud skills to empower them, like Voracious Arc that applies Torment only when it's used with at least 5 stacks of Blight. On top of that, the trait Alchemic Vigor heals you every second for every stack of Blight you have. This is actually a pretty nice counter to the lack of shielding from the Shroud mechanic. Alright, let's have a look at the simplified rotation for instance content, and afterwards we'll try and make the build more suitable for a comfortable open world experience. Harbinger is largely ranged by default, aside from the skills Voracious Arc, Devouring Cut in Vital Draw and Shroud. This makes it very convenient for all kinds of gameplay, as you can freely position yourself and still maintain a high damage output. If you cannot be in melee range for a time, simply skip the skills I listed and execute the rotation as usual. The general rotation concept is very simple, as it involves using almost all of your weapon and utility skills on cooldown. With pistol on the main hand, you do not even have to keep track of an auto attack chain. If you lack access to torch, using a dagger instead is worse, but just fine for starters. In order to understand the rotation design, it's important to know that Blood is Power applies bleeding and torment to yourself. For maximum output, you want to transfer these conditions to enemies as soon as they are applied to you. To do that, always pair Plague Signet and Blood is Power. Plague Signet immediately transfers the self-bleeding and torment to enemies. Try to time it right when the conditions apply to you, as they might get cleansed otherwise. When you execute it against a single enemy, the rotation would slowly drain your life force pool. As soon as something around you dies occasionally, you should not have any life force issues in the long run. We're using Vital Draw and Shroud to make the one weapon rotation more sustainable, as it is no DPS loss anyway. The disadvantage of that is that you might not be able to keep it for Defiance bar damage. For the opener of the rotation, you want to start with precasting Elixir of Promise and Elixir of Anguish for initial Blight stacks. After that, you want to use all your weapon and utility skills from right to left and make sure to transfer the conditions from Blood is Power with Plague Signet. Then enter Shroud and the general rotation starts. After the opener, the general rotation consists of 2 sections, Harbinger Shroud and Pistol and Torch. In Harbinger Shroud you want to use the following skills: Dark Barrage 3 times, Devouring Cut 2 times, Voracious Arc 2 times and Vital Draw once. You always want to start with Dark Barrage and Voracious Arc, as they are the skills that define the duration of the Shroud loop. Leave Shroud after the 3rd cast of Dark Barrage, so Shroud 2. After exiting Shroud, you'll be back on Pistol and Torch. With the exception of the combo of Blood is Power and Plague Signet, you just want to use all skills on cooldown. Try to stay in melee range for the elixirs to apply Blight to yourself, otherwise you might lack stacks for the skills that consume it. Since you use all skills except for Weeping Shots only once per loop, start with that and squeeze the second cast in at any time later in this section. As soon as Shroud becomes available, enter it and repeat from there. When it comes to CC skills for Defiance bar damage, you can save any of the following skills if you need them: Vile Blast, Voracious Arc, Oppressive Collapse and Vital Draw. All of those CC skills in the rotation will apply Torment because of the trait Insidious Disruption. Additionally, since we're not using a second offhand weapon, you can put on any weapon that brings additional CC. This could be a spear, a greatsword, a warhorn, whatever you desire. Now, let's look at how we can adjust the build for open world gameplay. For open world, it makes sense to make a build more forgiving so that you can sustain on your own if you need to. The first step for increased survivability is to use the trait Parasitic Contagion in Curses. This will heal you passively based on your damage dealt, which increases with each target that you hit. As you can see in the background, this can help with some otherwise very annoying open world fights. Additionally, we'll make use of Twisted Medicine, Deathly Haste and Harbinger, and as many pieces of Ritualist or Celestial gear as you can afford. Rare Ritualist armor and exotic trinkets are cheap to buy. The vitality from Ritualist or Celestial makes your Harbinger Shroud much stronger, so you can benefit from more persistent blight stacks and higher damage under pressure. You can also replace Soul Reaping with Death Magic. Usually this isn't required, but it helps against very tough enemies. This comes at a damage loss as it does not fully cover vulnerability. Whenever vulnerability is provided by external sources, the damage gap becomes much smaller. So essentially, we're playing a Quickness Harbinger with Death Magic. That way you obtain massive amounts of toughness, permanent coverage of protection and passive healing at a fairly small damage loss. The traits Putrid Defense and Corruptor's Fervor stack up Death's Carapace very fast and thus provide pulsing protection when you have more than 25 stacks of it. Each stack of Poisoned you apply grants 2 stacks. When you start combat with Weeping Shots and Vile Blast, you will stack up 30 stacks within 2 seconds of entering combat. On top of all of that defense, you will heal passively via Alchemic Vigor and Parasitic Contagion. Now, if you don't want to deal with the Blood is Power shenanigans in open world, Corrosive Poison Cloud makes up for an excellent AoE tool for Poisoned and Weakness. As I've indicated before, this build is a very good and simple boon provider. The coverage of protection I explained already. Blood is Power and Oppressive Collapse provide might also in an area around you. Furious Demise covers a partial uptime on Fury on yourself. On top of those, you can use the Relic of the Midnight King for full Fury and high might coverage in an area with the 4 short cooldown CC skills you have. Elixir of Anguish, Deathly Haste and Twisted Medicine apply a full uptime on quickness in an area and a partial uptime on all boons in an area. The concentration from Ritualists extends the duration of all of them. If you want additional boons, you can have a look at the other elixirs, which all give boons on application. With Twisted Medicine, they will apply all their boons in an area, so you can just pick whatever you like. If you want even more boons, there's always the possibility to make use of Jade Protocols in open world. They give 150 additional toughness, vitality, condition, damage and power, as well as all boons aside from stability, resistance and resolution on entering combat every 30 seconds. Finally, let's look at how to deal with conditions and incoming control effects. I like to use the Well of Power skill for pulsing might, a condition cleanse and a stun break in one skill. Another skill that combines condition cleanses and stun breaks is Plague Signet. If using any of those is not enough for you, you can use Plague Sending in Curses for another condition cleanse every time you go into Shroud. Condi Harbinger is certainly one of the most fun and very powerful builds in open world, and as a cherry on the cake, it shares a lot of very important boons in an area around it without actually losing much efficiency on itself. It's simple to play, provides good range. What more do you want? Alright, that's it for this video. Feel free to like and subscribe for the YouTube algorithm. I hope this video was insightful for you and made you want to try Condition Harbinger. See you next time and happy blight spamming.